G'day, I'm Murray. This is my backyard, and I'm going to be mentioning silt a fair bit in some upcoming gardening videos. You might be thinking, why? I've got access to a source of silt. I'm going to explain once what I'm doing with the silt and why I think it's useful, why it's good to use this resource, and then I don't have to mention it in any of the other videos just to save time. So I can refer you back here. Why silt? What am I doing with it? All that sort of stuff. Now, let's go to voiceover. What we have here are the silt mines. This is the silt. This is what has to be extracted and added to any kind of garden use that I can think of. The silt mines are quite long. That's a very noisy gecko. And there are footprints from various animals in them. It cracks like it is clay, but it is not clay. This is a very, very odd little substance here. Very, very, very fine dirt. Now, there's more than one silt mine. I have not even started on this one yet. And I've not touched this one yet. There's almost no rock in it. It's actually incredibly easy to dig up, or more correctly remove, because you're not really digging, you're scraping it off concrete. And this is so very easy. You do have to chop it up a bit to try and make sure that you can fill your containers with it. But there's very little vegetable matter in it. There is some, but not much. I'm waiting to see if I'm going to have seed issues, because there could be some seeds or lots of seeds in it. I'm thinking not, because of the nature of it. Incredibly fine, looks like clay, absolutely does not react like clay. Very interesting stuff. Holds a lot of moisture, much like clay, but has other attributes that are not clay-like. I'm lucky enough to be in a very small pocket of volcanic red soil around Gladstone. And the joy of this is that our soil is very porous, unlike the clay rubbish that is all around us, absolutely all around us. And this particular silt or dust, I nearly want to call it dust. When you wet it, it turns red. It looks grey and nondescript, but then when you wet it, it starts to turn red. And you do want to wet it, because if you're working with it when it's dry, it is very dusty. So it's worth wetting it, but it's very dense. It holds a lot of moisture. It's the next afternoon, so I came back here and I chopped these up a bit more yesterday afternoon, and now it's time to see if it's wet enough to work with. Lovely. This was a periodic revitalising of the bed that I do to all of them when an opportunity presents itself, when they're not full of plants, or even sometimes when they're full of plants and I can work around that a bit. In this case, I'd already sprinkled pelletised poultry manure and a pelletised seaweed. It's a mild fertiliser, but it's really full of micronutrients that I think are useful to put in the garden. I'd spread that around ahead of time. Then I started to put down the silt in a moderately thick layer. The soil in the garden's pretty rocky, because the silt has washed out of the garden down to the bottom of the valley over the years. So I kind of like the idea of putting silt back into the garden. The Great Barrier Reef is off the Queensland coast, and I live in Queensland near the coast. Silt is a bit of a problem for the reef, or can be a problem for the reef in certain weather conditions at certain times. I'll include some information in the description in case you're interested in having a read about how silt and fine clay particles as well band together to affect the Great Barrier Reef. After the silt comes a fairly generous layer of manure. This is well-rotted cow manure. You may have seen my manure videos. If not, you may like to have a look at them. I'm not really turning the garden soil over here. I've got live plants in here. I want to keep them alive. I'm just kind of stirring it up a bit with the pitchfork to try and get that manure layer to interact with the silt layer, break up the silt layer a bit, loosen everything up, stir the silt deeper into the soil and the manure a bit too. Just sort of mix it all a little bit, but not really give it a thorough turning over, which would damage some of the existing plant's roots. When it comes to mulching, I had raked the mulch that I could get off the top of the bed before I started to work on it, chucked it in a tub. I applied that first because it's the most well rotted. I tried to apply it roughly evenly, but you don't get too fussy about these things. Then I applied some fresher baled mulch on top. I hope you enjoyed this little chat about silt. It may have given you some ideas. I'd be interested in hearing from anybody who thinks that this is a good idea or a bad idea, because I don't know. I mean, it's the finest topsoil imaginable. It should be good, and it should stop it washing out to the reef next time there's a large rain event. And it will just, I assume, continue to refill in those aqueducts, tunnels, whatever you want to call them. Anyway, have a good one.